Yeah. You can see I have a nice shirt on. Matchless gift shirt. If anyone's interested in a matchless gift shirt, you can let me know. This isn't an advertising campaign, but I think it's cool.
It's Canto 4, Chapter 14, Text 16.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
The sages continued, O great hero, for this reason you should not be the cause of spoiling the spiritual life of the general populace. If their spiritual life is spoiled because of your activities, you will certainly fall down from your opulent and royal position. Purport. Formerly, in practically all parts of the world, there were monarchies, but gradually, as monarchy declined from the ideal life of religion to the godless life of sense gratification, monarchies all over the world were abolished. However, simply abolishing monarchy and replacing it with democracy is not sufficient, unless the government men are religious and follow in the footsteps of great religious personalities. Yeah, it's true. In the name of democracy, so much immoral or unfair or unjust things can go on. And there's no real checking system, as it were. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Prabhupada says here that gradually as monarchy declined from the ideal life of religion, means that the monarchies, when they were based around kings being guided by ministers, religious persons, and it turned more into probably what we hear a lot about in England, the monarchies prior, which were really focused on just their own sense gratification, right? I know you're reluctant to acknowledge, but back ancient times and other monarchies, the actual king was guided by I think you mentioned sometimes Queen Elizabeth, God rest her soul. The second. She really felt that her position was service and was ordained by God, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so she really was a godly person. So that's kind of rare. So replacing now with democracy and everyone gets a vote, and Prabhupada's already spoken about the dangers of that then you get people who are they just want sense gratification, so they'll vote for whoever will give it to them, and then they promise them the world and they don't give it to them anyway. So text 17. Okay, long purport. The saintly persons continued. So remember, this is the saintly Brahmins who are trying to advise King Vena. Saintly persons continued. When the king protects the citizens from the disturbances of mischievous ministers, as well as from thieves and rogues, he can, by virtue of such pious activities, accept taxes given by his subjects. Thus, a pious king can certainly enjoy himself in this world as well as in the life after death. Purport. The duty of a pious king is described very nicely in this verse. His first and foremost duty is to give protection to the citizens from thieves and rogues, as well as from ministers who are no better than thieves and rogues. Formerly, ministers were appointed by the king and were not elected. Consequently, if the king was not very pious or strict, the ministers would become thieves and rogues and exploit the innocent citizens. It is the king's duty to see that there is no increase of thieves and rogues either in the government secretariat or in the departments of public affairs. If a king cannot give protection to citizens from thieves and rogues, both in the government service and in public affairs, he has no right to exact taxes from them. In other words, the king or the government that taxes can
levy taxes.
The taxes can levy taxes from the citizens. There should be like a punctuation in there, a comma, I think. The government that taxes can levy taxes from the citizens only if the king or government is able to give protection to the citizens from thieves and rogues. That's a very intense sentence. Okay. Yeah, so I guess that the main point is that, the role of the government, the role of a king, the role of anyone ruling over a country or district is they're meant to be giving protection. That's Kshatriya. Kshatriya means to protect. So, so like that. I think that's the basic essence there.
Okay, next paragraph. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 12.142, there is a description of these thieves and rogues in government service. As stated, Prajaste Baksa Yishyanti Malecha Rajanya Rupina. These proud malechas, persons who are less than Shudras, representing themselves as kings, will tyrannize their subjects, and their subjects, on the other hand, will cultivate the most vicious practices. Thus, practicing evil habits and behaving foolishly, the subjects will be like their rulers. The idea is that in the democratic days of Kali Yuga, the general population will fall down to the standard of Shudras. As stated, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. Practically the whole population of the world will be Shudra. A Shudra is a fourth-class man who is only fit to work for the three higher social cases. Being fourth-class men, Shudras are not very intelligent. Since the population has fallen in these democratic days, they can only elect a person in their category. But a government cannot run very well when it is run by Shudras. The second class of men, known as Kshatriyas, are especially meant for governing a country under the direction of saintly persons, Brahmanas, who are supposed to be very intelligent. In other ages, in Satyayug, Treta-yug and Dwapar-yug, the general populace was not so degraded, and the head of government was never elected. The king was the supreme executive personality, and if he caught any ministers stealing like thieves and rogues, he would at once have them killed or dismissed from service. As it was the duty of the king to kill thieves and rogues, it was similarly his duty to immediately kill dishonest ministers in government service. By such strict vigilance, the king could run the government very well, and the citizens would be happy to have such a king. The conclusion is that unless the king is perfectly able to give protection to the citizens from rogues and thieves, he has no right to levy taxes from the citizens for his own sense gratification. However, if he gives all protection to the citizens and levies taxes to them, he can live very happily and peacefully in this life, and at the end of this life be elected to the heavenly kingdom, elevated, or even to the Vaikunthas, where he will be happy in all respects. I mean, this issue of taxes is one of the biggest sort of scams of democracy, taking from this place to give to that place. I don't know what everyone else thinks, but it's like it's very rare the average common person benefits as much as the people who are taking those taxes. I mean, even in being in a country like America is shocking. And not just America, mind you. Not that many countries there are, but not many like England that has free healthcare, whatever people may make of it. And when you're in a situation where you don't access that unless you pay a lot, you appreciate, and your average American should really question, what are you doing with my taxes? I'm not concerned with you stockpiling nuclear weapons and, pumping billions into the space mission, because I need stuff here in this planet. Basic things that citizens should have: housing, education, health, basic things, So, yeah, it's interesting. This tax is another way of controlling and actually torturing, or really, I would say, dealing with citizens in a very bad way.
Yeah, I guess what I understood there is that Srila Prabhupada is making the point that there's always been some system for levying taxes, even in Vedic culture. Kings or landowners, they would extract taxes from people, and they would pay the king, but in return the king would actually do something.
Yeah, they were happy.
Well, it's interesting because as soon as I said that, I thought, then they would give protection. And I was thinking, oh, well, that sounds like the mafia, or gangs. They're like, you pay me, I protect you. From who? From myself. If you don't pay me, then I'll duff you up, So, but yeah, I don't think it was exactly like that. The idea was like they were offering protection from rogues and thieves, and they would protect. Or ministers who were thieves, which is, I would say, the highlight of this purport that... like that. But yeah, taxes I don't think are uncommon, but
no, they're not uncommon, but how they're taken and how they're distributed is different.
Absolutely. Okay, there's another long purport. Do you want to just go ahead and do number 18 as well?
Okay.
All right. Text 18, translation. The king is supposed to be pious, in whose state and cities the general populace strictly observes the systems of 8 social orders of Varna and Ashram, and where all citizens engage in worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead by their particular occupations. Purport. The state's duty and citizens' duty are very nicely explained in this verse. The activities of the government, head, or king, as well as the activities of the citizens, should be so directed that ultimately everyone engages in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The king or government head is supposed to be the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and is therefore supposed to see that things go on nicely, and that the citizens are situated in the scientific social order comprised of 4 Varnas and 4 Ashrams. In the Vishnu Purana it is stated that unless people are educated or situated in the scientific social order comprised of 4 Varnas, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and 4 Ashrams, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas, society can never be considered real human society, nor can it make any advancement towards the ultimate goal of life. It is the duty of the government to see that things go on in terms of Varna and Ashram, as stated herein. Bhagavan Yagya Purusha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the Yagya Purush, as stated in the Gita, Bhoktaram Yagatapasam, 529. Krishna is the ultimate purpose of all sacrifice. He is also the enjoyer of all sacrifices, therefore he is known as Yagya Purush. The word Yagya Purush indicates Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna, or any personality of Godhead in the category of Vishnu Tattva. That really opens it up. In perfect human society, people are situated in the orders of Varna and Ashram, are engaged in worshiping Lord Vishnu by their respective activities. Every citizen engaged in an occupation renders service by the resultant actions of his activities. That is the perfection of life, as stated in the Gita 1846. Yata pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvam idam tattam swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, man can, in the performance of his own duty, attain perfection. Interesting. So this is interesting that the Brahmanas are recommending Varnashram system, and Prabhupada is, corroborating what that system is, and saying that that qualifies society to be considered human society if they function according to that. And then this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which is interesting, that or the concept that basically if you're functioning in a Varnashram system, then whether you're a Vaishya or a Shudra or a Kshatriya or Brahmana, and regardless of your ashram, actually it doesn't matter. Whatever you're doing inside of the system, according to your nature, according to your Varna and ashram, is considered service to God, to the whole. So that's, of course, I think Prabhupada coined that term Devi Varnashram, which means that, that really Krishna is the center. So if you're quote-unquote a housewife raising your children, staying at home, cooking, cleaning, everything that you're doing is considered service to God. Or if you're a street sweeper, or if you are a businessman, or if you are, whatever, then anything that you do, a Brahmana who's performing yajnas and sacrifice, everything is considered service to God, because that's the function of the system. All the parts work together to serve the higher purpose.
Okay, next paragraph. Thus the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Shudras and Vaishyas must execute their prescribed duties as these duties are stated in the Sastras. In this way, everyone can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. The king or government head has to see that the citizens are thus engaged. In other words, the state or the government must not deviate from its duty by declaring that the state is a secular one, which has no interest in whether or not the government advance in Varnashram Dharma. Today, people engaged in government service and people who rule over the citizens have no respect for the Varnashram Dharma. They complacently feel that the state is secular. In such a government, no one could be happy. The people must follow the Varnashram Dharma, and the king must see that they are following it nicely. Interesting. A king has to see that they're following it nicely. That means the king has to follow it nicely himself.
Yeah.
Oh, we won't open that one up with the current king. But that's what happens. And it's a shame not to get political, but because there's so much respect, whether you're a royalist or not, for the late queen. But it's interesting, as soon as she passed, and then immediately people were becoming, like, basically abolishing the monarchy. And this why, despite all her hard work and dedication, then that the person that's coming up after her own son, just in terms of his own shenanigans and behaviour, it just crumples it. And it's interesting because we're here talking about King Vena, and I forgot what his dad was called now.
Anga.
Yeah, Anga. So he was respected, good king, this, and then his son comes along and then hasn't even been on the throne for that long, and they want to dismissing, and it destroys that, whole
Tarnishes,
living.
blemishes
Yeah.
the image. Yeah.
So it's interesting how the emphasis on leaders, whether they're king or in the government or whatever, that you have to set such a good example publicly and privately, more so privately in one sense, because it's so disillusioning when you find out the people you've been supposedly following and doing what they're saying, they're not doing it themselves, It's such a shame. Someone was just talking to us recently about a young with religious faith leader, and then they're leading a lot of young people towards the faith, and then it was found out he was engaging in activities that would not be good for their youth, as it were, meaning what they're preaching. I don't mean any, their leader, and so that kind of shut that down, I believe, that group. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, let's open that one up at the end of the program. I don't even know what you're talking about, but yeah, I mean, that's standard. Yada yada charity straight das tad tad. That someone, whatever a great person does, common men follow, and when a great person acts like an idiot, and that was going on from the time with Prabhupada. But here he was often talking about, I think it was Nixon, and how he, corrupted himself, and so like that. Yeah, if a leader acts nefariously, then it spoils everything. You have to be really careful when you take a position of leadership. But that also goes for parents, teachers, officers, police officers, and anyone with a position. Okay.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Hare
Have an amazing
Krishna.
day. Hare Krishna. Glories to Prabhupada and the Srimad Bhagavatam.